the dangerous impacts of climate change can be avoided if global emissions of greenhouse gases can be substantially reduced. This means going from a fossil fuel-based economy to a fossil fuel-free economy. It means going from deforestation to create farmland to reforestation to create carbon dioxide sinks. So this is a real change in behavior, and at the same time that change contains opportunities, not only dealing with the challenges of climate change that lie ahead of us, but also opportunities out of this big new market that is appearing. We're talking about a $2 to $3 trillion a year market, and already countries like the United Kingdom are playing into that market. In 2013, the estimate is that our low carbon economy produced something like 122 billion pounds towards our economy. As we move through to Paris, we see that we need an agreement. We couldn't face up to another failure of the kind of that we had at Copenhagen. This is already very late in the day. We are likely now to get an agreement. And that agreement, involving 197 signatures from 197 countries in the world, is a critical pathway. It's not a complete pathway. And when we look at the nationally determined contributions country by country and then add them up, we can see that this is not nearly enough to manage to stay within the agreed no more than 2 degrees centigrade temperature rise since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. But nevertheless, it's going to be a critically important start on this pathway determined by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Now, what we also need to recognize going forward is that there are many different actions taking place through bilateral, trilateral agreements around the world. We've got across the European Union a cap and trade process. Cap and trade is now taking off in China. We've got cap and trade in California, Quebec, other provinces in in Canada, other states in the United States joining in these processes. Avoided deforestation. We've had tremendous success with the New York Forest Declaration, declared on the 23rd of September last year in New York. That declaration says there will be no more deforestation of natural forests by 2030, and we will have reforested an area the size of India by that time. Now, what we have to date is 37 of the forested nations signing up to that agreement, and Britain, Germany, and Norway providing funds to back that up. So what we see is action taking place country by country, bilaterals, trilaterals, and also action driven through by this international agreement. Paris is going to be a beginning of a new phase of that process. Climate adaptation is another aspect of this issue. And so what is needed is climate finance, so that the developed countries of the world provide finance for the least developed countries in particular to enable them to make the switch to low carbon economies, to mitigate future impacts, but also to develop resilience against the impacts of climate change. And in this respect, it's very important that I can underline the fact that our International Climate Fund, which was $5.5 billion for the last 5 years, has now been increased to $9 billion for the next 5 years going forward. There's much to be done, and Paris has got to be seen as a beginning, but at least it is the beginning of a very important phase towards a low carbon economy.